Oats is probably one of the most versatile, nutritious foods that you can cook with. Harraways it's really one of the iconic settler businesses. Henry Harraway founded the company back in around 1867. I guess what I wanted to do was really bring what is a very cool brand story to life, from settler times right through to the modern day.
Welcome to another episode of a Kiwi Original. This is episode 10, and on today's show I have Peter Cox, who is the marketing and product innovation lead, the head for Harraways, a company that has a distinguished history in New Zealand, going back, doing a bit of calculation, Peter, here before we started the call, 153 years, making it a very rare business indeed to be around that long. So first of all, welcome on the show.
Yep, great. Yeah, it's good to be here.
And good to be virtually here as well.
Yeah.
I guess first question, Peter, is around, we know that Harraways is an oats company. That's where it's come from, where it's founded from. Can you give a bit of a background to those who are listening to this on the podcast and watching on YouTube? What is the background to Harraways? Yeah. Where did it come from?
Sure. Well, we've actually, believe it or not, we've actually launched a book, and the book's called Going for Grain. It's a 150-year story. So we brought this out in 2017. It's actually when I joined the company. And what you would see about Harraways is it's really one of the iconic settler businesses, really settler food businesses within the Dunedin, Otago area. So essentially, Henry Harraway founded the company back in around 1867, and he was an immigrant and very, very industrious sort of character, hard-working, like a lot of the people of that time, and really, the whole European immigration, a lot of the tastes of overseas came into New Zealand at that time. So obviously Dunedin, Otago, very much a Scottish settlement. So Scotch oats, rolled oats for breakfast was a very big thing. And obviously with the target population of that time, and then obviously the beautiful growing conditions for oats and oat farming around Southland and Otago, it was the perfect marriage for Harraways to kick off. And so the Harraway family really got involved, really invested strongly in the original oat mill that, by the way, we're still in, and still based in Green Island and in Dunedin. And they invested a lot of money in the business, forged a lot of great relationships with local farmers, and some of those relationships are still alive to this day, believe it or not. And so, the Harraways family stayed involved really till the middle of the 20th century, upon which time the Hudson family, so very much the baking family, if you remember Cookie Bear and all of those great stories of flour, self-raising flour. So the Hudson family bought in, and obviously the Harraways family sold out. And the Hudson family are involved to this day. We've got two active board members, Ross and Deans, who are involved in a governance sense right to this day. And we're very much a staple business. For a long time, the business revolved around flour and oats and flake grains. In the early 2000s, the business took the decision to get out of flour simply because it was so commoditized and very, very difficult to make money in that area. And really the opportunity, the big golden egg, if you like, was oats moving forward. Much more, I suppose, money to be made in oats. There's a lot happening around the whole food movement, health and well-being. So it made a lot of sense for the company to specialise and move in that direction. And certainly over that first decade of the 2000s, the throughput through the company in oats terms probably went up around sevenfold over that time. So, we're now the leading bulk bag brand in oats in New Zealand. We've got a fairly sizable export business now that we export our oats very much to Southeast Asia. And we also do some private label as well, which is an important part of what we do as well. So, but certainly a growing, strong, profitable business that's pretty much one of those really strong businesses of Dunedin. It's a really intrinsic story, and believe it or not, we're older than the Otago University, so we have been around for some time.
People want to eat those oats before they can sit down and concentrate for exams. It tells you the priorities of a nation back in the mid-1800s was make sure everyone can be fed, and then everything else can grow off that. Now, you started at the company relatively recently in the overall scheme of things, 3-4 years ago. What attracted you to the product innovation marketing role within Harraways? What experience could you bring to it, and what did you see as the things you wanted to change once you got settled within the company?
Sure. Well, I guess for me, I've always been a FMCG food and beverage marketer, and passion is there for food. I'm personally a real foodie, and I guess what I wanted to do was really bring what is a very cool brand story to life. The whole Harraway story from settler times right through to the modern day is something that's pretty impressive, and especially the provenance story around Otago, the oat farmers, the mill, all of the stuff that has gone on through the story. I mean, I came in at a pretty fortunate time. We were right at the time of the 150-year centenary, so I was able to go right into the archives, if you like, of all the brand history and sort of make sense of that. So I guess, for me it was food, great brands, iconic, market leader in what it did. I saw nothing but opportunity. It's, great at what it does. It's a real specialist. It's well revered. Some people in the business have done some great work over the years. My opportunity was really to take the bones of what is a great brand and just what I would say is modernise it in the way that it's contemporary vintage. So really take all those sort of vintage pieces that are iconic to the brand, but sort of package it all up in a way that's contemporary. And that's really what my role's involved. It's been sort of work around the brand and modernising that and sort of doing some rebranding work alongside some pretty exciting, neat product development stuff that we've done. I mean, we've launched a range of functional health products. Oat Active's a good example, where we've fortified oats, and we've done a job, what we believe is a world first, where we've meshed plant sterols alongside the beta-glucan in oats to create a double action to help combat low-density cholesterol. So that was probably my first major product project. And then secondly, getting and diversifying our oats a little bit beyond the breakfast table into areas like snacks. This was a real personal pride moment where we won a Outstanding Food Producers Award for this product, which has been available through select New Worlds and Liquorlands as well. And so that's, again, taking a very versatile product like oats and getting it into the snacking area. We've done a lot of work around our single-serve convenience oats. So we've repackaged that. We came out with a space-saving box last year. Very much got a recyclable, compostable packaging story going on inside, with each of the sachets being home compostable. The other aspect of this is where we can, we try to source local, provincial ingredients. So obviously all the oats are local, but for example, not this box specifically, but we do a Kami honey one, which is obviously a New Zealand honey variety. We've packaged up Roxburgh apples in the past. So, again, sort of provincial flavours where we can, we start to try and bring that into the category. So all opportunities that I guess our consumers are looking for, which is around, tell me where my food comes from. So do a real job around the source of the oats and the story around that. Provincial flavours, tastes, ingredients, functional health, which is where the Oat Active comes in. And obviously this move to snacking and grazing on the move has been a real driver around where we've been trying to go with our products and our range.
I think that what you've just shown there in terms of product range, it may not be immediately obvious if you're a marketer or a category manager, that each of those products actually solves a problem, not just for the consumer, but also for Harraways as a business. So we all know that oats is predominantly, you have it at breakfast time. It's not necessarily a lunchtime or an evening snack. So if you don't get your customer eating oats in the morning, you have to wait 24 hours to potentially get them again eating your product. So what's interesting with the products you've shown there is there was some different time space ones, like the oat bites. That's probably an evening snack, not a morning snack. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you do get a fair bit of day grazing in the car as well, but yeah, they're probably more of a night entertaining type of option. So definitely trying to get our consumption up on oats across different day parts has been a definite strategic intention, no doubt.
And with the Oat Active product, with the potential to lower cholesterol, that's coming from a science angle on it. Who cares more about buying those scientific attributes than just buying regular old oats, for example?
Yeah, well, if we get back to who our core consumer is, we're very much, we look at our core consumer probably more psychographically. So we look at this whole notion of just eating real food. But within that, we've got three key segments. So we've got our millennial, who is now the largest shopping group, if you like. And they're all about future-proofing. So they're about genuine, wholesome oats that we package up, be it our steel-cut oats or our whole-grain oats, and they typically integrate that in their own way into their diet. We've got Active Mum, who's very much a key part of what we do every day, and she'll really buy into these types of products for both herself and her family.
Is that because of the time-saving aspect with those?
The time-saving aspect, absolutely. And then, to your question, really products like functional health often tie more into what I would call is the heartland consumer of Harraways, which is our baby boomer. And often, these products are ways that we can integrate diet-based measures, natural, wholesome diet-based measures that can almost right the wrongs of the past for someone who's perhaps, looking to lose a bit of weight or alter their diet and obviously change the outcomes of some of the perhaps health issues that they may have that are underlying. So this, I guess, fits into a boomer target that's very interested in trying to solve a problem naturally without having to do pills and potions, which is also a drive a lot more from our GP network, who are really trying to look to help people more with lifestyle-based change as opposed to pills and potions.
I think that's the beauty of having such a well-known staple product, is that when people want to go back to the things that are simple, that are natural, that are organic, that are whole foods, Harraways has got those options for them. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what we try to do is we try to package our products up with the minimum amount of additives. Obviously, it's all about trying to just utilise wholesome ingredients that we can combine together in a way that that works for these target markets. And, even if you look at our oat active product, it's basically whole oats and plant sterols. So it's all natural ingredients that are meshed together to create this fortified mix that helps people. So I guess, coming back to why did I join Harraways, I mean, it's also great to be working with a range of products that actually help people, that are diet-wise, they're great products. So, that inspires me every day too.
Sorry to interrupt. This won't take long. Subscribe to the show and you'll never miss another one of these amazing episodes. Right, back to the show. I think if you're passionate about what you do, it certainly makes it easier to go to work every day and transform things. And certainly in the time that we've known each other, I've seen a number of things like the products you've launched come into play. And it's always fascinating when I see them at the supermarket and they're getting a bit more shelf space, and now there's a couple of different levels and you've got these different product options. A lot of that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, happened before the brand relaunch. How do you go about taking, let's kind of talk about the brand, how do you take Harraways as a brand that's been around 153 years and change it a little, but not enough that people don't recognize all those new products on the shelf space?
Yes, certainly. I mean, and I think that is a really, really challenging and good question, and I think it's at the heart of what a marketer always wants to try and do within their career, and certainly, Harraways was a great project for me. There really were, I suppose, some great bones behind Harraways before we even got into the refresh. So, the colour yellow against our key competitor, Uncle Toby's. So, again, we had a real point of difference there with a property of yellow. We've got a great story around the mill, right? And what we needed to do was try and tell that story authentically and in a unique way. So, what we've done really is as I sort of said before, we've grabbed all of these things from the archives that were there in 2017, and we've just packaged them up in a contemporary way that brings the story more cohesively to life. So we've created this very strong yellow branding piece that says Harraways, it says yellow. We've done a much stronger job around the lock-up of Harraways, which the script that we use is actually off an original ANZAC.
Oh, really? Wow.
So that's the original script that is Harraways. We've come up with a sort of illustrative version, romantic version, if you like, of the mill. So that's intrinsic to the logo now, and we've done a much stronger job around our provenance story. Where does it all come from? Which is Dunedin, New Zealand, and when it was all established in 1867. So for us, we love the feel of these timeless illustrations. So you'll see this across a lot of our packs. Against it's that sort of vintage, contemporary, but it's done in a contemporary way. And even the way that we word things, we worked out, well, what is the Harraways way of talking? And the Harraways way of talking is very much about telling it like it is. We're good, straight shooting Southern people who just get on with it without a lot of fuss. And, so the way in which we package stuff up is, in a wording sense, and the way we describe things, it's all about help, but it's all about, let's get there in the least amount of fuss possible. So, a lot of the ways that we've laid out our copy is all on that basis. So it does come back to, what are we about? What drives us every day? We're all passionate individuals. Oats at the core. Just eating real food was the key thought, and this whole notion of heartland or homegrown, which was really sort of at the core of what we developed here. So you can sort of see the old logo where it was all based on a fairly standard font, and we've really moved it on to try and create a story that's much more about...
Just hold that other one up a little bit higher, Peter, the other one there.
Yeah, there we go. So in fact, you can see it probably better on the back
that's better,
here.
yeah.
So here you can see the old logo, which was this sort of rondelle, I suppose. We had the oat sheaf in the middle, very much a strong story about oats. But this is the one colour one. The real logo's got yellow at the back, but it was quite generic. Whereas this is all about something that's unique to us: the mill, the script, and the colour.
I think you've explained it there really well, and for those marketers that are listening, you've just got some really amazing free advice. If you can stake your claim to the brand values where it's differentiated either nationally or internationally. Like if you look at that building, it says everything. Harraways has always been in that one location for all of that time. No one else has been there, just Harraways. And the thing that's been produced there is just oats or flour or derivatives of that. So it makes sense to start there. And I like the whole nostalgia part to it, and actually removing some of the that label element, because then when you modernize it into digital, you've actually created a really nice overlay. And I think what you've done within Instagram on the Harraways NZ handle, it's just amazing, because it's not just the products you're showing here's the promise, here's the end solution. If you buy this product, here's what you could create, because here's some of our other customers and here's what they've created. So maybe, do you want to talk about how you've approached this
certainly.
digitally?
Well, I think you touched on it before, Ryan, when you talked about, how do we get oats into more parts of the day? And, oats is probably one of the most versatile, nutritious foods that you can cook with. And it's full of flavour, and there are a wonderful array of different recipes that you can pull together and you can have a lot of fun with. So I guess a lot of what we've done on social media has been about packaging up our range of oats in ways that it can be consumed, whether it be, obviously breakfast time is obvious, but, a great plate of porridge is obviously clear. But things like mueslis, you can make some great mueslis and be very creative in the way you make those. Smoothies, oat pancakes. You can also do some great waffles as well. So there's some great sort of things that you can do around breakfast. Then you move into genuine snacking. So, we do, clearly the ANZAC cookie is iconic, all about oats. You've got, whole food snacking balls is a real trend around that presently. So there's a number of snacking recipes that we've come up with. A number of them actually aren't about even cooking them. They're just about using the natural oats and then coming up with something that is really wholesome and tasty. Obviously meshing in fruit where you can, things like that. And then it's amazing what you can do in a dinner sense. Oats mixed in to make up meatballs, delicious. You can create lasagnas with oats, risottos with steel cut oats. So instead of using arborio rice, you use steel cut oats as your rice base. So there's a number of really cool dinner recipes that we've come up with too. So, and I think the other aspect is we've got this sort of trend and this movement going on around plant-based foods, and so we're perfectly positioned with oats to really capitalise on that, and obviously really start to move things forward with regards to taste story, and meshing that with the whole food movement, and where does my food come from? So all these things are sort of happening at the same time, which gives you some great opportunities going forward.
How do you know?
And lots of things to talk about.
Yeah, and I was going to say, how do you know where, how fast to move? Like how much to listen to what's going on those hashtags and what trends are happening, the customer research you do, the sales you see at supermarkets, versus how much do you turn inwards with the team at Harraways and say, well, what's our R&D? What's our product development? What innovations do we want to do as a company that are company-led, not customer-led? Because we think this is where customers should be going. How do you? What's your kind of ratio there?
Yeah. So the take on that, I think it's a really good point you raised. The social media is a great tool used in the right way, in that you can tap into insights and general public voices that come back to you. So we're using it a lot as a listening tool, and we're using it a lot to help us guide product development and the way in which we should be engaging our brand with our shoppers and our customers. So we're definitely doing lots of quizzes and lots of general questions out to people, but we're also using it in a way that we can tell our story. So, what we're finding with customers is they're really inquisitive, and I suppose as they're more connected, they're getting more learned about the world around them and things that are happening. So, there's a lot that we have to talk about around where our oats come from. There's a lot we have to talk about around the benefits nutritionally of oats and what you can use them for in certain health angles. There's lots that you can talk about around general, benefits that even New Zealand oats may have over international growing choices. Recycling stories. Clearly, there's a real drive at the moment for understandable reasons around packaging waste and plastic and all of those things. So that's been a massive story that we've talked about with our various followers. So, all of these things, I suppose, comes back to, tell me how to use it usefully. Tell me about where does it come from. Tell me about how you're helping the planet. Tell me about your new stuff and how you're moving forward. So all of these things become a great sort of day-to-day platform to talk to people on.
Now, last time I was down there, Peter, you had, I think, recently acquired some land out the back of Harraways to grow for the first time, at least on the square meterage footprint. What's going to be built there, or what is in the process of being developed there?
Yep. So in 2016, the company bought some land across the Kaitarai stream. And really the aim of that was to future-proof our growth. And, at that time, the company, which it still is growing strongly. And, product storage and general storage was probably a big issue at that stage. So the new land that we've bought also came with a warehouse. And so that's given us extra ability to warehouse. But I guess over time, it gives us options around our plant too, and maybe how that changes or flexes or grows. So really it was quite simply about future-proofing our business to enable our growth, which is, a positive story.
And for consumers out there in the current times, certainly when I've gone to the supermarket, there are rows of things that have been sold out, and I did note that Harraway's oats was one of those. What do you see in terms of the changes in shopping behaviour and how that comes through to what you're seeing in demand from shoppers currently?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, I don't think New Zealand's immune or different to other Western countries or even Asian countries. That there's been a lot of stock up buying. Some people call it panic buying. So certainly if I use the last month as an example, we've probably seen a 50% spike over last year in terms of demand, and that's been purely driven by consumers coming into grocery stores and shopping for staples. And and talking with other people I know in the food and grocery industry, be it salt or flour or basic breadstuffs, all of these basic commodities are in huge demand right now. So I take my hat off to people in the business right now who are just contingency planning and managing to keep our products as best they can on shelf, and really managing a very difficult situation with huge spikes in demand. We are seeing things flatten off a little bit, certainly this week versus perhaps last week. But things are still frantic out there, and talking to Peter Barker, our logistics guy, this morning, he was just saying how he's still really chasing his tail to keep product on shelf, and just doing what he can to just keep the factory and materials to keep it running. It's a hell of a time for staples manufacturers at the moment, of which we're one. And this is one of the amazing things about what we're seeing at the moment. We're sort of seeing this dual situation happening. Some industries are completely shut down by it, but we're the other way around, just simply because people still need to eat, and they're eating a lot more in their homes, and they're not going out, so they go into the supermarket and they buy more food for the home, and that's basically what we're seeing.
I was talking to someone who supplies food service and supermarkets, and with the close down of restaurants, that was the end of their food service business, but they've seen the demand pop up through supermarkets, so they haven't seen overall demand shift that much, but it has been a retooling of what they supply to supermarkets versus how they supplied in food service. Is there any we hear that New Zealand's got plenty of food, which is true. We can feed 60 million people. Are you seeing any things that you're worried about running out of, or is oats almost an unlimited kind of staple that you can manufacture?
No, look, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, I think we're obviously scrambling at the moment, simply because we've had to ramp things up very, very quickly. But we're managing, and it's amazing what both your growing network and your people in your business can do in times of pressure and stress. I think people tend to underestimate themselves in terms of what crises can drive out of people. And so no, I mean, the answer to your question is, from our perspective, no. We feel we're on top of demand spikes, and from a point of view of the raw materials, the packaging, the staff for the factory. I mean, we're constantly working to keep the staff safe and healthy and supported, and that's continuing to happen. But the reality is that we're managing, and I'm sure there are businesses out there like us that are having to manage as well.
Yeah, and I think my hat off to both your company and all of those out there that are supplying the supermarkets, and to the supermarket staff. Like, they're working around the clock just to keep those shelves not only stocked, but have more and just piles. So when you go in there, it feels like no one's going to miss out. And I think that feeling, when there's empty shelves, it feels like there's no more, even though, you and I know, like, I've been through your factory. There's just such a mass of manufacturing, and then there's the storage and the stock, and then there's putting it into the packages. There's so much. So when you see an empty shelf, it doesn't necessarily mean there's no more. It just means it needs restocking. Yeah. No, exactly right. So I guess, we're all part of a team across the industry, and, we're trying to do our bit from a manufacturing, sourcing, and get it out to our freight company, who then gets it to those hard-working retailers that are doing their bit at the coalface. And I think, this has been an amazing time just to watch, I suppose, how Kiwis work together, really, and how they can support each other, across industries, but also in communities. I mean, I was actually just shopping on my way back just this morning, and was at a grocery store in town, and even just looking at those retail staff and just how they were communicating to each other and getting in there and stocking up shelves, and the customer service people. It was a great
sort of visual of teamwork, really, and sort of made me think, actually, just how good people can work in times like this.
Brings
the best out of people.
Yeah, it makes you proud to be a Kiwi about how 5 million of us have had to do something that's never been done before as a country, and how at an individual level we've accepted it and we're collaborating and we're being patient with each other and with ourselves. And from what I've seen happening in some of the other countries, it's I'm just glad that's not happening here. So long may it continue.
Yeah. I think one of the stories that's come out, Ryan, has been not stories, but messages, has been be kind to each other and be patient. And, that's come right from the top of our country. And I think, be it in our business or be it at a more macro level in the community or in the retailers, I am, you hear the odd crazy story, but it's few and far between. The major thing is that you are seeing people being respectful and kind and patient and trying to be helpful. So that's pleasing from what I've seen.
Question off the top of your head, your favourite oats recipe?
My favourite oats recipe, I just can't go past the classic ANZAC cookie. I've always loved my cup of tea in the evening, and I've always liked a little something with it. So the ANZAC cookie with a nice cup of tea is always a favourite for me.
Where can I download that, or where can I? Is that on the Harraways site? Just
go to the Harraways site and go into the snacking area, and you'll find a really good ANZAC cookie recipe there. It's a classic.
Excellent. I will. I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll make a public declaration now that I'm going to make these ANZAC cookies, and then I'll send them in to you and see if they're Instagram worthy for your Harraways NZ Instagram account.
I look forward to that, Ryan. I look forward to personally tasting them. That'll be great.
Maybe after lockdown. I'm not sure if I'm able to give my fellow neighbours food currently.
Good point.
Otherwise, I would certainly be sending some down your way, Peter.
Yeah, good point.
Hey, well, thanks very much for your time today on the call and for sharing the journey that you're currently taking the iconic Harraways business on, and for sharing some of the insight into what it takes to work with a iconic brand and some of the different ways that you've pulled different marketing levers and innovated on products in a category that many may see as not something that would be easily brought forward and evolved. And I think you've shown that through some of these products, it's possible to innovate and shift the perception of a business. So well done with what you've done and achieved so far, and I'm sure that's not the end of it. And I look forward to tasting more Harraway's delicious products off the shelves when I'm shopping in the supermarket.
Great, Ryan. Thanks for that. And you guys are doing a great job too. I've seen all the messaging that you've got out there, all the calls for masks and protection and all of that stuff. But you're doing some great work. So yeah, keep all that up. It's great.
Thanks, Peter. Like it's a matter of if we all just do our little bit, because we're all experts in our own little area. If we all pull a little bit along, then it's much easier for the whole nation to keep going.
Great.
Thanks for your time, Peter. Cheers. This has been a Kiwi original brought to you by the New Zealand Made team. Thanks for watching. The New Zealand Made trademark is used by over 1,200 businesses in New Zealand. The New Zealand Made team licenses that trademark. Check if you're eligible at bynz.org.nz. If you feel that someone should see this, share it with them now. Otherwise, subscribe to youtube.com/bynzmade, and we'll see you on the next episode.